Almost every new product idea ends up having to be presented in a convincing and compelling way. It might be you need to present your concept to an investor, it might be you need to get a retail buyer on board to stock your product, or it might just be that you need to present your idea in a compelling way to your customers. Either way, you're going to have to present your idea really effectively. This video is for you. It goes through how to present an idea really well and some of the common mistakes that I've seen made by entrepreneurs over the last 20 years of my career in innovation. So make sure you keep watching. In this session, we are going to go through presenting your idea. And this is a slightly different session in that what I'm going to do is go through the presentation that we used to sell our product to John Lewis. Now, we'd raised by this point a significant amount of money. We had 4 people on our team doing this startup. So this presentation, which was about version 19, is in some depth and does go to extremes. But we were presenting to a retailer who could have been worth millions to us overall. And so obviously it was worth putting the effort in. And I thought that if I present the gold standard in terms of what you could aim for with your presentation, then that would help you see the level you could get to. Now, you could always obviously wind that back, and depending what you're doing, you wouldn't need to be as developed as we are in this presentation, presenting to, as I say, kind of John Lewis. But as I say, it's going to present a gold standard, and then you can always dial it back for what you're trying to achieve. I will show you in this session a basic level presentation for an idea that you're presenting for something like a license deal, where it doesn't have to be anything like as advanced as well. So you'll see both ends of the spectrum effectively, and from there obviously you can work out, depending on the route you're going with your idea, how far you want to go with the level of presentation you want to put together. So the objectives of this lesson really are to go through that, to give you the knowledge of how to present your idea effectively and where you might need to get to. You're obviously hopefully going to learn something from my presentation and from the client's presentation that I'm going to show you, and then from there you should be able to put together a plan for what you want to do and how far you are going to take it. Let's get on with it. This is the ARC presentation. The first thing to note on the title page is we've obviously got our branding sorted out. Now, there's a whole story behind our branding. I wasted a huge amount of money on a branding agency to put the branding together, all of which ended up changing. But that's another story for another day. Needless to say, I now don't suggest people use expensive branding agencies to put their brand together. But the important thing is we have a professional looking logo. It's in keeping with other brands within the industry, and there's a look and a feel to this in terms of it feels soft. It's about the textile. Clearly this feels quite natural, which is one of the main points of ARC. So what we've tried to do effectively, even from the front cover, is communicate a level of professionalism and communicate something about our brand. One of the main things you really need to do for your buyer, or whether it be someone you're trying to do a joint venture with, is set out something of a story. Now this slide doesn't do it effectively, but it does start to say something of who we are as a business. We're by parents for parents, and it sets out what we're trying to do in terms of giving a child the very best start in life. And the image obviously is it's focused on the baby. You'd be very surprised, but most pushchair brands or baby product brands, there's actually no babies in any of their photography. It's all about the parents and the look and the fashion and the fabric kind of color choices and the style and the image, whereas we set a very different tone from the beginning. So as you can see, just from 2 pages of this presentation, we're already setting ourselves apart, and we're already giving something of a story and something of our difference as a brand. So this is kind of where we were going, and again starts to set a bit of the background. Now what we should have done here, so maybe this isn't the gold standard after all, maybe it's only silver. I think what we should have done is put something of our story in here, where we came from, why we started to develop a pushchair. And the story is relatively straightforward. I'd had 3 children within 3 years and 3 weeks. We'd gone through 4 different pushchairs. And as a product designer, I just felt none of them was fit for purpose. None of them really was focused on delivering the right thing for the child. And as such, I wanted to design and develop something that really was focused on the baby. So really, this slide should have expressed that. And there's a really good point there. You could say, well, that's fine. You can always talk to that. Why does it need to be in the presentation? But often the person you're presenting to then needs to present to someone else within their organization or a group of people within their organization. So you really do need the presentation to communicate all of the key points, because you might not be in the room presenting it. And often, particularly with a license deal or a JV, you are trying to sell it to someone within the business who you're then needing to effectively be your ambassador within the wider business, or particularly to the people further up the food chain in that company, and they're going to have to present almost on your behalf. So you really do need the presentation to communicate all of the key points, and it to be standalone effectively without you in the room talking to it. So we then do go into the business case, and this is quite critical. So for any big company, particularly, or big retailer looking to take on a new product in any of the ways we've talked about in terms of route to market, you are going to have to paint a business case. So some of this will obviously be very normal to them, in that they are looking at these kind of trends, they're reading these kind of reports as well. But if you can set out something of a business case, this then does help inspire their confidence that you're commercial, you're focused on them making a profit as well as yourself, and you're aware of the wider market, and it starts to really sell it to them, not as a here's my product with my unique feature, but more as a here's a business case for how your company is going to benefit financially as a result of working with me to take this new product forward. So this is another key slide, really. This talks about the problems that the product is trying to solve. Now, I believe that all new innovation needs to solve a high intensity or high frequency problem. So either a problem that is going to have a really big kind of issue if it goes ahead, so threat to life or injury, or high levels of discomfort, something like that, or high frequency, i.e. it's not a threat to life or something that's particularly major, but it's a low level problem that happens all of the time and that people can really kind of get to grips with and understand. So one of our problems with Art Pushchair going forward was that the problems we were trying to solve really aren't high frequency enough, or high enough intensity. So yes, there are issues in terms of baby skin sensitivity. Yes, there are issues with babies being unable to regulate their temperature and getting hot in pushchairs. But these aren't problems that are really on the parent's radar when they're buying a pushchair. Often when they're buying a pushchair, it's pre-birth of the first child, and these things are not things they're aware of. So we found we ended up having to educate our potential market in terms of why these things were a problem. And as soon as you start to have to do that, you end up with a struggle and an uphill challenge. So in terms of presenting the idea, yes, you should present the problem you're trying to solve, but really in terms of validating your idea, you really need to make sure you're solving a problem that they immediately kind of are nodding their heads around the room and going, oh yes, that is something that comes up all the time, or yeah, that is a real problem, because actually that's going to cause significant issue if that isn't resolved. So this talks just a little bit more about really what we're trying to achieve as a brand, what our philosophy is, if you like, and then this starts to give them some level of reassurance, again around that business case, that if they take on this product, they're not going to have a problem with returns, because if you're a retailer, the last thing you want is a whole of these products kind of coming back because there's an issue. Starts to reassure them that we've spoken to the target market, that their customers are going to want this product. And if you can demonstrate data, research, surveys, or anything else that shows the retailer or the person you're doing a JV with or the distributor that there is a genuine market for the product, then that's ticking a big box for them that otherwise they're going to have to try and research separately to prove that this is something that's good and worthwhile and taking on. Now, this was a video of our product, and it was just a kind of 90-second video that went through the kind of key features of the product. Again, just helps really when we're trying to set the scene, and starts to draw the person in then into the product and the features. But you'll notice we haven't started with the product features. What we started with is the brand, the story, started to create some kind of emotional connection with the person, and now we're into the product, particularly from a background of how we're solving a problem. And then we go into a few more details. So there's some accessories that we also produced. We knew that any retailer taking on a pushchair needs the accessories. It increases the overall price of that sale and therefore the margin they're going to make. So we had to develop all of these to kind of go with it. And again, we're then reinforcing on the safety testing and standards. And then we go into more detail about our unique features. So our unique wheels that work on all terrain. We start talking about overnight sleeping and how we regulate baby's temperature within the carry cot. And again, it's very visual, this presentation. I've seen lots of presentations that are so wordy and no one's ever going to read all these words. You know, these people in these businesses are busy. They've got other priorities as well. You know, you need to be enabling them to have a quick glance at a slide like this, get the overall point and move on quickly. So this probably has too many words, but really what this slide is trying to do is say, look, we tick all the boxes. Sometimes this is called hygiene factors. So any pushchair is going to have things like telescopic handle, freestanding when folded, carry cot apron unzips. You know, there's going to be a series of things that your customers are expecting your product to do, as well then as your unique selling point that they're not expecting it to do. But it's reassuring to anyone you're selling your product to that you hit the key requirements that any customer has buying that type of product. This is basically setting out a pipeline for future product innovation. Actually, when it came to it, we never did produce the car seat or the carry bag. We did produce a second product, pushchair within the range, and these two products kind of got dropped as well. But at the time, what it really was setting out to them was the fact that we weren't a one-hit wonder. It wasn't that they were going to have to set us up as a supplier just for one pushchair. There was going to be a range of products. And for them, that's really about the business case. You're saying, look, work with us and there'll be all these other products coming that you'll make profit from as well. Now, obviously, it doesn't state it. You know, you can make loads of profit from all these products, but you're making that point in a subtle way by saying, look, we're going to bring out all of this other stuff. There's huge potential here. You don't want to miss out on this, is really what you're saying. And then it is important to look at the competitors. Now, it may be that your product is so unique and so different that there's nothing on the market like it at all, in which case, great, but you do need to try and find something to benchmark it against. This actually, pricing-wise, was a huge mistake in retrospect. We were pricing ourselves here alongside well-established, well-regarded brands within the nursery sector. We were completely unheard of at this point. And we thought we could achieve this price point because we had these unique features. But what we learned about our customer was that actually they are much more taken with the brand, the image, the celebrities pushing it than they are the innovative features. What we should have done is come in significantly cheaper so that someone could get better features on our product for a significant price reduction, and that would have actually enabled us to build up a larger customer base quicker and established ourselves better in the market quicker. So don't make the same mistake there. And we've got a separate lesson on product pricing anyway, and we'll go into that in more detail. Now, this is critical. The marketing plan often makes the difference for the buyer. If they feel that there's this whole marketing plan behind it and you're going to be putting tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of pounds into the marketing, then they'll be much keener to take your product on board if they are a retailer. Now, clearly this doesn't apply if it's a joint venture or a licensing deal. It might apply for a distributor, and it may well be with a distributor, and we've done this in terms of deals with foreign distributors, is we say to them, look, if you take this product, we will either give you a discount of £20,000-30,000 in our case to put towards the marketing of building a new pushchair brand in your country, or we can spend that money in your country with our agencies or with our in-house team or whatever it is to boost the initial sales. Because the thing is, for a distributor, what they really want to know is that someone is going to be doing the marketing so that there are going to be people going into stores to buy the product. Now, some distributors will do the marketing themselves. Others will just want to know that the money is being spent on marketing in their country. But it's very, very hard to sell a product into a retailer and then it sits there for several months and no one goes into store asking for it and to buy it. What you really need to be doing is getting your product into stores at the same time as really building up your marketing so that the store takes on board the product, and very soon afterwards they start to have people coming in going, I want to see the art pushchair, I want to see the eye candy, and I want to see the bugaboo. What you're trying to do is ensure that that retailer has some easy sales, because there are some people coming into store who already know about the products, already know about the brand, who are asking to see it, and that's hugely reassuring for a retailer, and that's really where you need to get to. So part of your presentation at this stage, if you're going to a retailer or to a distributor, is to really be talking about the marketing. Now with the retailer, it's a bit of a challenge really, because that marketing budget's got to come from somewhere. But equally, if it's a big retailer, they're placing a large initial order, it can be that you're going to reinvest the profits from that order into marketing, at least for the first couple of orders or the first year or so to establish your product. And that therefore doesn't necessarily mean having to invest further funds yourself or raise additional funds. And that can happen with a distributor as well. So a distributor will traditionally pay something like 30 to 50% as a deposit for an order, and then they'll pay the balance when that order is on the ship being sent to their country. So actually, depending how far the country is, obviously from where your point of origin of the product is, it can be anything from a week to 5 weeks, 6 weeks before actually that product is then in the country with the distributor. So obviously you've been paid in full before that, and you can be plugging your profit then back into your marketing launch. So just don't expect really to make much money off the first couple of orders from any big retailer or any distributor, because inevitably you're going to be plugging that money back into marketing. But if you get the marketing right, that's money well spent. You're building your brand, you're building yourself sales, hopefully for years to come. So talking about the marketing was actually a big part of our retail presentations. And you can see really already, we're not at the end of the presentation, but most of this presentation is not around what the key unique functionality of your product is. Most of it really is around the story, the business case, and then the marketing plan, which gives them the reassurance that they're dealing with a company that's really going to make this work and that they're going to be able to make some money out of your product. This is just a bit more about the marketing, shows some of the lifestyle imagery and that type of thing, some of the kind of social media stuff. And then by this point, when we presented to John Lewis, we'd already been selling, and that is really helpful. And it is much better to go to your key retailers that could be worth a lot of money to you going forward, having actually made some sales already, because we could quote what customers had said. We had some sales information about how much value of product we'd sold by this point, and we could show some of the branding and stuff obviously that we were using, and that's again hugely reassuring. If you've actually got sales, then that really counts. And if I did it again, I would be selling product probably at something like a 50% discount for the first 6 months or so, through small independents or online or direct sales or at shows, just to build up that sales volume, to build up the number of reviews of that product that are available online, because then all of that value means that you've got a much better case when you go and speak to a retailer. If you can go and speak to a retailer and say, look, we've sold £50,000 worth of product, or we've sold 20,000 products over the last 6 months, or whatever it is, then you're giving them confidence that someone is going to buy the product and they're taking less of a risk. Because as we've talked about before, you're asking someone to take what could be a career-defining decision. you've got to take the risk out of it for them, and everything we're talking about in this presentation helps to bring down their risk. So this is what it would look like in store. Again, always surprised how buyers seem to lack the imagination sometimes, and sometimes it really does help just to show what it would look like in this case in kind of a shop window display. It brings it to life for them, helps them to not have to creatively think about what it's going to look like in store, and hopefully this type of thing then inspires them that this is a good product that they want to have in their stores, basically. Now, just a quick word on POS. Now, POS is point of sale. Really, by strict definition, it means the area around the till or the cashier point itself, the point where you're physically taking money from the customer. Now, actually, in reality, what I've found, no matter whether dealing with John Lewis or a small independent retailer down the road, POS means the stuff around the products, anything from the brochure, the stickers that are going on the window, the thing the carry cot here is sitting on, if there were stickers on the product or the labels hanging off it or these banners in the background. In my experience dealing with distributors and retailers, they all call all of that kind of stuff POS. But either way, it's the display material that the product is going to be displayed to show off its best features in the store. And this can be computer generated imagery. It doesn't have to be real at this point. It doesn't have to be created. But the point is it's all on brand. It's communicating the same messaging throughout the presentation and all of this. It looks very impressive. And so hopefully, again, just reassures the retailer that this is a good product to stock. Again, if you're doing a JV, you wouldn't need this. But if you're talking to a distributor, it does help to show them that you've got POS. Often the distributor will say, well, look, I'll buy a container load of your product, but I'm expecting X number of POS units free of charge. And they will then provide them to their best retailers as an incentive to get retailers signed up to a new brand and a new product. So just think that through a bit as well, because it does help with retailers and distributors if actually you have got some designs of POS. We looked at various different options here. So this is, obviously quite a large display. It would only work really in a larger store. This is an option in a much smaller store. And again, good to have options because this can put off a smaller retailer who goes, well, hang on a second, I've got a tiny shop. Pushchairs are quite big. I've already got 10 different brands of pushchair. There's no way I'm giving over this much space to an unknown brand. So we had this kind of totem, which basically means you just stick the pushchair in front of it and you're not taking up much room at all. It's good to think that through as well, obviously. And there's some stickers that go on the product showing the kind of key features and everything else. Now, packaging is also pretty key. For our product, it wasn't necessary in terms of displaying the product, but for most consumer products, actually it's pretty critical that you have packaging because that actually forms almost your POS, as in that is the thing the customer sees on the shelf. It's relatively rare, like the pushchair, that it's on display. Often, obviously, it's in its packaging in a box or whatever else. So at that point, the box is pretty key. And this is never on display, so we can get away with something really that isn't that vibrant and doesn't express its messaging. But I will show you another example in a minute where actually the packaging is really critical and you have to really get that right because that's the thing the customer's seeing and that's the thing therefore that the retailer wants to make sure looks really good because that's going to help sell the product. And with packaging, it really is a bit of an art. But there's only about 3 key messages, 3 to 5 maximum, that you can get across on a piece of packaging. And it really does have to hit the customer almost between the eyes. If you can imagine they're walking down an aisle of all these other products, you've got to capture their attention straight away so they actually look at it because it's new. They may not have heard of it before despite your best marketing efforts. So you've got to capture their attention very quickly. And then you've got to answer their key questions, explain why your product's the best thing since sliced bread, all in quite a small space if it's a small product, in a small piece of packaging. So your packaging design can be absolutely critical. And these packaging designs are designed for display, so they are much obviously more vibrant, designed to capture the attention of the customer a bit more and then express some of the key features as well. Margin is obviously kind of critical, and within these presentations, often it's best actually not to have the pricing within the presentation because you're often changing this depending who you're talking to. So sometimes it's best to have this as a separate PDF or a separate piece of paper even. But the retailer's going to want to know, what's the retail margin? What's the recommended retail price? So obviously the retailer's going to want to know, what's the recommended retail price? What are you expecting to sell it to me for? What can I make margin wise and percentage? Some retailers work in percentage margin. It's all about percentage margin for some retailers. Others, actually, it's more about the cash margin. So we communicated both very clearly, which means they don't have to do the maths in the meeting. It just makes it all a bit easier. And then as you can see here, what we've looked at is a volume discount. Now it's very rare really for it's as little as 10 products to get a volume discount, but it's a very high value product comparatively. If you've got something that's 10 or 20 pounds, your volume discount might be if they order 100 or 200. But what we're trying to do here is motivate the retailer to buy more, to take more of a risk, because that obviously improves our sales numbers and our cash take and our margin quickly. What it doesn't say here obviously is what our margin is or what our cost price is or any of that. You want to keep that well hidden, and we'll talk more about pricing, as I say, in a different module. But it's good within your presentation to start to show them this. And really, if you're asking to take a new product, the margin you need to be offering them is significantly better than what they would be getting on one of the big brands. They can probably sell the big brand equivalent of your product all day, every day. People coming into the store asking for it. That brand's been marketing the product for years. You've got to give them a reason to sell your product over that one. That's just accessory pricing. And then we've got something about the marketing claims we're making on the accessories there as well. And then warranty, that's the key issue often for retailers. They want to know that if there's an issue with the product and the customer comes back with it, that you're going to deal with it basically. And then this type of thing starts to help as well. So particularly if it's an item that could go wrong, what are you going to do about customer services? How are you going to manage that? They want an easy life, these retailers. They don't want to be dealing with any of this. So to know that you've already got that set up and how you're handling it is often important for them as well. And so that's the end. Good. So hopefully that shows you something of a gold standard in terms of a product presentation. As you can hear from what I've said, this presentation still isn't perfect. I do it slightly differently now. I think getting more of your story and the story of the product into the presentation early on is important. You don't want to take too long over that, but at the end of the day, people buy people, and people love stories, and that gives them something memorable to kind of grasp onto as you then take them through the rest of the presentation. And that presentation worked. It worked with John Lewis, and there must be something that's good about it. A few other things then just to go through to finish off this session. In terms of the details you need to get right, if you're going to present your product to a room full of people from a large company for a licensing deal, you're going to sit down with an international distributor or any of those kind of things, probably the first thing they're going to do when you walk out the room is look up the product. So you really do want some kind of web presence. And this slide obviously suggests a website, but actually you probably also want your social media profiles live and a little bit of content on those as well. And that all needs to fit within your wider brand image and be consistent. You don't want old imagery on there that isn't the most up-to-date design or anything like that. And really that's about building confidence and also inspiring them that if customers start to look for your product when it's in the store, they're going to find something online that reassures them that it's a genuine company and you're producing a good product. A lot of the time, the next thing they'll do is look you up on LinkedIn. So please do make sure your LinkedIn profile is good and up to speed. I've got a very good expert on LinkedIn who can help with your profile for a very reasonable fee. Just get in touch if you want to be put in touch with him to help with that. So I've just showed you a full presentation there. John Lewis did ask for that presentation because they did want to show it to other colleagues. It might be you want to create a stripped back version or a version with more words that needs less speaking through. Or it may be that actually you've got a product brochure or a flyer that you can hand out to them so that they've got something then they can show to colleagues That is quite critical. It's very, very rare that I've been in a meeting where they haven't wanted to show someone else to validate their thinking and start to have a conversation with someone else about it. So make that easy for them. You want them to buy the product, you want them to be able to have those conversations, discuss it internally with the rest of their team, and to then come back to you and go ahead. We talked about the importance of the consistency of branding, but you really do then want to get that consistent across your LinkedIn profile, your website, your social media, your presentations, and the product potentially as well, and your packaging, just to make sure it looks like a consistent brand. You don't want logos of different sizes and different colors and different fonts all over the place and everything else. It starts to look very, very amateurish very quickly if you do that, and that will put them off. Less of an issue if you're doing a license deal or a joint venture, obviously, but if you're going down the other routes, you do need to get consistent branding sorted. Your tone and professionalism is really key. I've seen a lot of people fall over with this. After you've put so much time and effort into developing your idea, finding the right contacts, setting up these meetings, it can be easy to be defensive, but please don't. It really doesn't help. They are likely to want to push you slightly, to ask the difficult questions, to highlight the thing that maybe you don't want them to highlight about the product. But that's their job. They wouldn't be any good as a head of new product development or as a buyer or as a distributor if they weren't able to be critical about new product. So don't go in expecting that they are going to be critical potentially about some areas of your product, because that's their job. But if you're then really defensive about it, that really is going to take the meeting down the wrong kind of tone and is unlikely to result in a positive outcome. You really want to take on board their feedback, respect their professionalism and their experience, and from there start to try to answer their questions in the best way that you can. But I would try and do it calmly and without getting defensive. Appreciate it's difficult because it is your baby. You have put lots of time and effort into it. It's very difficult if they're then negative about it. For reference, the Mothercare buyers, Mothercare's out of business now, so I can probably say this, but Mothercare buyers were briefed by Mothercare to be very cold about new products. It was all part of their negotiating strategy. So I spoke to Mothercare buyers about our pushchair, for example, and initially they were quite warm about it and they were nodding at the features and everything else. And then when we started to get into negotiations, they were like, oh, well, this bit isn't that great, is it? And I'm not quite sure about this, and I don't really know. And I was really surprised because it felt like quite a shift in their response. But I spoke to a couple of people afterwards who've been in the industry for a lot longer than me, and they were like, yeah, it's just standard. That's how Mothercare buyers operate. They're briefed to do that because that puts them, they feel, in a stronger negotiating position to get you down on price. So try to go into the meeting with an open mind, try to take on board their feedback, and go from there with it. But if you do get defensive, it can go south very, very quickly. And generally speaking, you do need to be very professional. I think what I would say is the larger the company, the more professional and formal you need to be. I find it really helpful to try and be your buyer. Think about things from their perspective before you go into the meeting. Try and understand what they're trying to achieve, what's important to them. You'll notice that the presentation that you've just seen is very focused on answering the buyer's questions and the buyer's concerns. It's not a showcase of all the amazing development that we've done, all the amazing creative ideas that we've come up with, or anything else. What it really is a very straightforward presentation focused on answering the buyer's questions, getting the buyer on board with the product, and reassuring them about their concerns. So try and be your buyer, try and walk a mile in their shoes, understand where they're coming from. We actually did use an ex-retail buyer to review some of these presentations and give us her opinion on them. And again, if you need that for what you're doing, please do get in touch with me. I can put you in touch with a lady who's very experienced buyer in all sorts of companies previously, from Kingfisher Group, who own B&Q, right through to Early Learning Centre, and she was also part of Mothercare as well. But she'll be very good at giving you a critical opinion on your presentation before you put it in front of the important people who you want to buy your product. So do get in touch with me if you want her contact details. And the final thing I'd say is it's really important to try and be easy to deal with. A lot of these people, they don't want hassle. No one really wants to come to work and think, oh gosh, I've got a whole day of confrontation with lots of different people. If you're really easy to deal with, if you're open to their feedback, if you're responsive and you make changes where they suggest it quickly and without a fuss, that can really, really help. We found out from one of the buyers, I don't think it was John Lewis, I think it was somewhere else, that one of the main reasons that they continued to stock our product was that they felt we were their best supplier to deal with. That every time they said, look, this isn't working for us, or we want to change here, or this web listing needs new images, that we would get it done really quickly, we'd send it straight back, that there was no kind of issue with any of that. We were just basically there to try and facilitate them selling more product. And they really appreciated that. If you can imagine, if you're a buyer dealing with lots of big brands and big companies, trying to get anything changed and sorted out can be a real issue and can take months. So small businesses, startups, much more agile than large businesses, use that to your advantage. So that really is the end of this lesson. There's a whole load of helpful stuff in there, I hope. Do provide any feedback if there's anything you think I should have spent more time on or something that I've missed out. Hopefully you now have a better understanding of a professional presentation of an idea, albeit for a major retailer. Hopefully we've also gone through in enough detail the things you need to get right to ensure that it's consistent and that you're communicating a level of professionalism and competence to the people you're presenting to. And then from that, hopefully you can take all of that and formulate the next steps that you need to make. I did say at the beginning of this lesson that I would show you some examples of other product presentations that were for license deals or for different types of products and didn't go into the same level of depth. I will leave you with those to review now. So the last bit of this lesson really will be a slideshow of various different products and the product promotion packs that they used and the imagery and the content that they used to promote their ideas. So I hope that's really helpful. I'll see you in the next lesson.